see the facts when there was still time. To end our addiction, fossil fuel addiction, dependence on future existence, inventions. Activate, advocate, organize, stand up and join the resistance. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is threatening us. There's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. No more political defiance. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. No more political defiance. Sound the alarm, cause no harm. Storms and rising seas, drought, famines, floods could bring us to our knees. Warning, warning, sound the alarm, take action for humanity. Stop this insanity, get clarity, carbon neutrality. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is threatening us. There's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. No more political defiance. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. No more political defiance. Oh, 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 oh,
See the sun and the sky, I see a glimmer in your eye, and the mountains and the seas bring us happiness and peace. I feel the wind passing by, the gentle breeze a lullaby, and the rustling of the trees with the dancing of the breeze. Oh, love is all around us, so let's protect what He gave us. I see the stars in the night, and they're beaming oh so bright, and the moon that guides us all when we take an evening stroll. As we lie in bed tonight, I pray that all will be alright. Soon the birds will start to sing, hope and joyfulness they bring. Ooh, love is all around us, so let's protect what He gave us. Da 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 da.
I got a big heart, I can let you in. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. People ask me what my secret is, I just smile and say, live for today. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the sun came up and I gotta say, see it in a whole new way. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. People ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. People ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, cause there's excitement in the chase, this I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run towards the wind and let the challenge draw me in, cause I want more. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. 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 Oh, wake up heart and wake up mind, and see the world is yours to find. And with every passing day there's more, calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny it, that I feel adventure calling out to me. Yeah, we are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for And I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. Living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be free, meant to be free.
Good afternoon or magandang hapon, climate reality leaders, and to everyone who is tuning in with us to the live stream on the Facebook page of the Climate Reality Project Philippines. Welcome to another episode of Klimatotohanan, the fortnightly webcast of the Climate Reality Project Philippines. This episode, entitled Grounded Southeast Asian Forests Our Roots, is our World Environment Day special episode. I am Desiree Lorente, or you can call me Demi, a Pinoy climate reality leader, former chairperson for Information and Communication of University of Santo Tomas UNESCO Club, and current Vice President for Knowledge Management of Youth Management for Innovation of the Philippines. I'm very glad to be hosting this very special Klimatotohanan episode where we'll visit some forests in our region and talk about the current realities they are facing. And of course, co-hosting with me today is none other than Grizel, a fellow climate reality leader from the Climate Reality Project Indonesia. Hello, Grizel.
Hi, Demi. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone in the Philippines and Indonesia, and good morning from my part of the world. I am Grizel Jayapurna, or you can call me Grizel, a young Indonesian climate reality leader, a student at the Oxford University, and the former president of Oxford University Indonesian Society. This Klimatotohanan special episode encapsulates the three main activities that young climate reality leaders from the two branches have been planning for the past 3 weeks. First, the Reimagine open letter that we'll hear later during the climate activism segment. The second is the Recreate Briefer and virtual tour, which we'll do in a little while. Last is the Restore Adopt a Seedling drive, the details of which will be shared later. This event will not be complete without the set of speakers we have this afternoon. We're very lucky and happy to join our esteemed panel of speakers who have done amazing work on forest restoration and management.
This afternoon, we will give a brief status update on the different forest ecosystems in Southeast Asia, specifically the different forests in the Philippines and Indonesia. We'll also appreciate the beauty of the different forests in the region, the different organisms inhabiting these forests, and the ecological services these ecosystems play. What else are we hoping to accomplish this afternoon?
We also hope to spark actions from the public by showing the different efforts done by individuals, communities, and organizations to conserve, protect, and restore the forests. Our forests have an integral role in the entire biosphere. That's why we really need to start conversations about these things and transform these conversations into concrete actions. We'll do the first part this afternoon. The second part will be a challenge to our viewers.
Oh, wow! The things we'll talk about this afternoon are also interesting. And I'm sure that our speakers this afternoon will make this discussion even more interesting. Before I forget, our viewers this afternoon will also receive certificates for joining us and participating in our discussion. Grizel, how will our viewers avail of our certificates?
It's very simple, actually. They just need to comment their names on the Facebook live stream comment box. They may also include their comment, the place where they are right now, what they're doing, their relationship status.
Oh, I don't know. That's not part of what they should comment.
Yeah, I was just joking. So after commenting, they'll just sit back, relax, and enjoy the webcast. After the webcast, they need to answer the feedback form that will be commented on in the live stream comment section shortly after the webcast ends. So again, comment your name, watch the webcast, answer the feedback form. Just that, as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. There. For those who are watching on Facebook Live, just remember, comment, watch, answer. Also, don't be shy to use the react buttons and actively participate in the discussion through the comments. I know that our viewers are very much excited to meet our speakers this afternoon. So allow me now to introduce our first resource speaker, Ms. Anne Bakker. Ms. Anne is currently the Director of Partnerships at Fostering Education and Environment for Development, Inc. since 2015. She is also pursuing a part-time PhD in Development Studies with a specialization in Social Forestry at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She holds a Master of Science in European Economics from the École des Hautes Études Commerciales and a BA Honors from the Rotterdam School of Business. Anne earned her Philippine Civil Service Commission Professional Level Certification with a second category standby classification with the Philippine Army Reserve Command, assigned the rank of Major, and received her Water Search and Rescue, with both operation certification from the Philippine Department of Defense, and has her La Union Surf Club Inc. Surf Instructor Certification Between 1998 and 2014, she held various senior executive marketing and communication functions at P&O Nedloyd, GE UNESCO IHE, Institute for Water Education, Clearstream International Dutch Bors Group, Tyco, Qatar Financial Center Regulatory Authority, W Energy Global Private Limited, Sabang Renewable Energy Corporation Inc., and W Energy Power Pilipinas. So Ms. Anne will be joining us in a little while. And as a teaser for our discussion later, she'll be sharing with us briefly her response to the question, what for you are the forests?
All right, moving on to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Mahardika Putra Purba. Mahardika Putra Purba, or Dika, is a climate reality leader from Indonesia and the former program director of Alam Sehat Lestari, or known as ASRI, an NGO focusing on planetary health, which is the interconnection between human health and the health of the environment. Based in Borneo, Dika is now supporting the organization as research and program consultant. He is also a lecturer and researcher in the Department of Forestry at Kupang State Agricultural Polytechnic, and this is in Timor Island, Indonesia, as well as an affiliated researcher in the Program for Disease Ecology, Health and the Environment at Stanford University. He holds a BSc with majors in Forestry Engineering, MSc in Tropical Silviculture and Forest Genetics, and currently finalizing his PhD thesis from the University of Copenhagen. His research and works focus on forest genetics, conservation, and ecosystem restoration. Since he began working with ASRI, he broadened his research areas and expertise to planetary health to ensure that as many people as possible benefit from this planetary health approach to conservation and sustainable development. Hello, Dika. Thank you for joining us today. So, we would like to ask you the same question. What for you are the forests? Sorry, Dika, you are still muted.
Okay. Hi everyone. Do I have to answer the questions right now?
Yeah, please share with us what for you are the forests?
Well, the forest is it's many things. I mean, because the benefit that we get from the forest is enormous. It help to generate the our climates. It provides us with food, and it also provides us with a lot of livelihood. So for me, I think not just also not to mention the forest is our it's the lungs of the earth, so we can't live without forest because we need oxygen to breathe, and as long as we need oxygen we need plants, we need forest for able to produce oxygen. So yeah, for me it's very important that we have our forest.
Thank you, Dika. Appreciate it. So let me introduce our next speaker, Raiza Togado. Zai is a youth volunteer, environmental advocate, and a professional in the forestry field. She has been awarded as one of the top 10 outstanding youth of Laguna in the 2018 Gawad Felicissimo T. San Luis and is very dedicated serving as a Deputy Vice President of Gawad Laguna Inc. She is also a graduate of Climate Reality Project 2020 and a proud member advocate of the 2030 Youth Force of the Philippines. Aside from being a volunteer, she is currently working in the Department of Environment and Natural Resources as a forest monitoring officer. So hi there, Zai. Thank you for joining us today. Like Miss Anne and Dika, what is your answer to the question, what for you are the forests?
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for that question. For me, forest is really the source of our life, like very basic functions of life, like the ecosystems and the ecology, con- ecology that is created in the microcosm of the ecosystem. Like through the forest, we have natural resources like what the food we eat, the energy what we are having, and all the natural cycles that we are that are needed to sustain our life here in our world. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Zai. Yeah, I agree that I don't think we can live with the forest. So we're moving on to our last speaker, but definitely not the least. We should welcome Dr. Puji Rianti. Dr. Puji Rianti, familiar with Puji, is a former radio broadcaster who is now active as a lecturer, researcher, environmental activist, and writer. Puji teaches at the Animal Ecology and Biosystematics Division, Department of Biology, FMIPA IPB University. Puji graduated with her PhD in 2015 from Primatology Study Program at IPB University and was a joint degree with Anthropological Institute and Museum, University of Zurich, Switzerland. Since 2010, Puji has been involved in the biology, more specifically genetics, research group for orangutan conservation, resulting in the naming of new orangutan species in Sumatra, Pongo tapun, sorry, Pongo tapanuensis. Puji is also involved in inventory research and conservation of biodiversity ecosystems in forestry and rural urban areas in Sumatra and Belitung. In 2016, Puji was trained directly by the former US President Al Gore and joined the Climate Reality Project afterward. Since then, she became a climate reality leader and personally actively plays a role as a volunteer, mentor, and advocate in various activities held by the Climate Reality Project, especially in mobilizing the younger generation to care more about biodiversity and health through Indonesia's local food law. Starting in 2019, Pucci has been involved in the Monitoring Center for the Observatory of Sustainable Tourism of IPB University to work together with government agencies and communities in tourism areas in Belitung to create sustainable tourism so that the conservation, economic, and social welfare factors of the community can run in balance. Puji loves to sing, doing Zumba, yoga, and meditating. She believes that we, as a human, are part of the whole universe that needs to work in synchronization and take care of each other as one. She is also one of the three founders of the Indonesian literature community Makna Kata. Together with the community members, poems and short stories in the form of anthologies have been published. Hi there, Dr. Puji. Thank you for joining us today. So would you let us know your thoughts on the question, what for you are the forests?
Okay, hello Grisel, thank you, and hello everybody as well. Oh, I'm sorry, my video is not running well. So forest, well, I just have a simple answer for that actually. Forest is me and part of my universe. So yeah, I just see forest as also myself. So that's why I really care about forests, and that's why we also need to care about our forests everywhere it is. Yeah, and then later maybe we can talk more about this environment and forest and biodiversity and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Puji. We appreciate it. So Miss Anne is already in the room. So can we call on Miss Anne to give her thoughts on the question, what for you are the forests?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Miss Anne.
Hi. Um, for me, the forest also is become my life. It's for me a source of livelihood with the communities that I work with in the uplands, the coastal areas, also coral forests. So for me, it's just a complete ecosystem. Um, but it's let's say we're codependent on each other. You know, one cannot exist without. Well, nature can exist without us, of course, but since we're here anyway, it's important that we work with nature properly. So yeah, for me, it's really a source of livelihood, water, food, the basic necessities that our communities really are struggling with now because of development. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Anne, and thank you all to our speakers who have given us a brief background on what they think of forest. So now that we know who our speakers are, I think we're ready to start the discussion. Right, Grisel?
Yes, Jenny, let's get this started. For our first part of our discussion, we will take a look at the current realities faced by our forests in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is among the regions with the richest biological diversity. In addition, this region is blessed with forests full of diverse flora and fauna, all of which play an important role in keeping these ecosystems thriving and balanced. However, the forest ecosystems in both countries are under threat because of the rapidly changing environment caused by anthropogenic activities such as deforestation, forest fires, unsustainable land conversion, illegal wildlife trade, and many more. So I'd like to address the first question to Ms. Anne and Dika. What is the current status of the forest in your country? What are the observed trends in the previous years? Is the forest cover area in your country increasing or decreasing? Miss Anne, you can go first.
Hi. Yeah, so in the Philippines, where I am now, maybe you can see out there the Sierra Madres. Can you see beyond the city?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's where that's our longest mountain range in the Philippines. Um, we have actually a lot of still mining activity going on in the Philippines, unfortunately, and specifically mining for energy and precious materials, a precious stone for construction. And then we also have the issue of a large increasing demand in construction materials, so sand harvesting, as well as even from the oceans. So I think this is something all of us in Southeast Asia share. Yeah, the price of progress, you know. We have also a number of successful, not just our organization, but even the government with the National Greening Program. It's one of the largest in the world. And, you know, it's an effort of not just the private sector, but also, not just the government, I mean, but also private sector. And increasingly, fortunately, maybe it's the same in other countries in Asia, but a lot more interest and demand from civil society. So just for example, youth, very, very high. Every year since we've been planting since the 1980s, amongst the youth. So we're very lucky in that respect, because a lot of the research is also coming from that sector, from college, university. So I think a lot of our effort is more and more directed towards youth because of the power that they have to build a better future. If we cannot change, for example, the enforcement of policy here in the country, we have fantastic laws, but the enforcement is very much lacking. And also capacity building is much needed in communities, you know, simple things like awareness, agroforestry, simple techniques that have been around, but that the communities are not informed of, you know. So it depends really on the whole. We have increased our forest cover, but not necessarily community based and not necessarily complementing the communities and their livelihood opportunities. So I believe that's really where the opportunity is. Even things like carbon sequestration, if we can get more data in that area, then there's more impetus for even private sector to get involved, you know. So a lot of our constraints now are we don't have enough technical capability to assess carbon sequestration even in mangrove forests, upland forests. So this is where we have some capacity gaps also. Yeah, but overall, I think the awareness is definitely increased, and it's doubled during after the or during this pandemic. So this is a good starting point to, let's say, scale up. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely to hear how the awareness are increasing, but there's still a lot more work to do. So this is what the webcast is for. um, yeah, so let's move on to Dika. How about in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think for Indonesia, generally speaking, the forest cover still continue to shrinking, you know, or decrease. And it was mainly due to the deforestations that caused by agricultural expansion, urban expansion, infrastructure, you know, mining, and, you know, forest fire. We always blame for forest fire, you know. If everyone's remember forest fire that happens in 2007, and then 2012, and then again in 2015, and the latest one in 2019, even causing transboundary haze pollution in the in the ASEAN region, and attracting global attention. So, naturally speaking, the forest can naturally regenerate. But if the forest fire is happening, again and again every year, even though they can naturally regenerate, still a lot of actions need to be taken to make sure that the forest fire, it's not an it's not a annual event, especially for Indonesia, and yeah, I mean, our governments also did a lot of things. They transformed the policy in national level, as well as there's a lot of NGO in Indonesia that are now shifting their focus to plant more trees. Either through seedling adoption campaign or planting trees campaign. There's a lot of organizations in Indonesia that are now focusing on that, but still, there's a lot of things that need to be done, because we cannot work in silos. So we have to work together with, with community who lives near the forest, to protect the existing forest, and also work with the government on a national level to push, with policies that are giving benefit to our nature. So there's a lot of things that need to be done, and because of the lot of plantings that has been going on, I think it's also a good thing and a good sign that in some parts of area of Indonesia, the forest cover it's slowly return. In the organizations that I work for, ASRI, we work with Gunung Palung National Park. When we begin our program in 2007, 40% of the area are degraded. Since then, it's been from 2007 to 2021. So since then, around 14 years later, we saw some remarkable changes because we work closely with the community together with the national park. We saw, that the 20,000 hectares of secondary forests are, regenerated. So it's also, one a good sign. And then moratorium policy in Indonesia, not giving a new license to new company or new oil palm company. It's also a good push, to help save the forest in Indonesia.
Thank you so much, Tika. And I couldn't agree more. We need to continue raising awareness, and we need to also continue inviting more people to take action. So again, thank you, Ms. Anandika, for giving us a brief background about the things happening in our forests. So just to expand a bit more, the Philippine forest cover is down to about only 7 million hectares, or 23% of the country's total land area, from over 90% during pre-colonial times. Even with the National Greening Program and log ban in place, forest loss persists, and gains from reforestation efforts in some parts of the country and are erased by losses in others. Under the current administration, forest loss has reached a record high, with more than 10,000 hectares of primary forest being lost annually. In 2017, forest loss was the highest in 18 years. And in Indonesia, deforestation rates hit a historic low in 2020 due to various government policies, such as a permanent ban on the clearing of forests and peatlands, a moratorium on oil palm plantation licenses, forest fire mitigation, and a social forestry program. Forest cover is at 50.9%. However, Indonesia's NDC still allows up to 325,000 hectares of deforestation per year to focus on economic growth, potentially clearing 3.25 million hectares of rainforest by 2030. So I'd like to ask our speakers to help us make sense of these figures and understand the different problems faced by our forests. So what are the problems faced by the forest in your country, and what are these threats? Dr. Puji can go first.
Thank you for the question. So yeah, I think in every places, yeah, the threats for forest, especially tropical forests, and especially again for country, in the development countries, yeah, like Indonesia and Philippines and Brazil, yeah, and in many cases, it's always, it's always goes to what people call it. This is all actually for mankind development, right? For the humankind, for the sustainability of life of 7 billion people. So how we can support the 7 billion people to live. So technology, and then all the products from the industry, and so on. It has to co-op, yeah, with the problems. So therefore, then we face the problems. Then, yeah, how the deforestation, like already mentioned before, and also of course illegal logging, yeah, and this kind of things that threat the forests. But maybe the main problem is actually also because people not really understand what forests are for in our lives. Yeah, because if they understand, if they really know what is the important to have forests on Earth, they should think twice or maybe like many times before they open the forest. So the lack of understanding, the lack of how you really want to know the importance of having forests, including everything inside, yeah, all the flora and fauna that actually support human lives. And it's just not about human lives on the side of the forest, yeah, on the belt, like maybe the village or the rural society, but it's actually also supporting the life of the people that lives in the metropolitan city, right? So I think for me, for what we see, we seriously need to think that this the destroying, the deforestation, and everything, we have to bring this back to our self understanding about what is the importance of the forest, and do we want to understand that, and do we want to accept that, and then maybe we can try to find a way to solve the problem that we have together and compromise and everything, but then we can get the good solution for both sides. Maybe it's not going to be perfect, of course, yeah, there will be, because it's not going to be like perfect only for forest or perfect only for human, but maybe we can still live together side by side, but then still can have this benefits, yeah, in sustainability. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Puji. I couldn't agree more. We need to widen our reach in raising awareness, especially for people who are in the dark when it comes to these topics. So, how about in the Philippines, Zai?
Yes, I agree with the answers of Ma'am Puji, and I want to add about the other problems that we face in the forests of our country, especially the agricultural expansion, such as kaingin, non-conversion, and grazing. Because of the overpopulation in our country, that the other family choose to live in our forest areas, and in order to sustain their lifestyle and livelihood, they will do such kaingin or slash and burn activities, and some illegal agroforestry activities in the area, and as well as the grazing of the wild animals. And next is the infrastructure expansion such as mining, road construction, hydropower dam construction, and tourism facilities. And on the last are the biophysical factors such as climate change, typhoons, and the rampant mudslides and landslide that causing the biodiversity of our Philippine forests to be threatened and degraded. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Puji and Zai, for enlightening us on the different problems faced by our forests in Indonesia and in the Philippines. Now, just to expound on these problems a little more, we know that problems have their roots, and sometimes these roots are very much interlinked and interconnected. The problems mentioned by Dr. Puji and Zai a while ago also have deeper roots and sources. So it was mentioned previously how a lack of awareness is one of the root of the problems. But just a follow-up to both of you, what do you think are like the main causes of these problems? What are the different reasons why these problems still persist up to this day, despite the increasing awareness maybe? Dr. Puji, maybe you can go first. What are your thoughts?
Okay, thank you, Grisel. Yeah, so as we mentioned before, yeah, this awareness is a main problem. And what is the core or the roots? Maybe, well, we can go back to see from the education. That's what I can say first, yeah, because if somebody educated well and educated well here, I'm not talking about somebody who can, who can afford to go to the highest university until maybe doctor or PhD or whatever. No, I don't talk about that. But just the basic education that we should have, and we should understand what is the environment meanings for us. Yeah. So if these people is not maybe with people who live near the forest, or people who live in the forest, yeah, they are actually wiser, yeah, they understand more what is actually the forest function, or needs, yeah, for them. But then for people who lives far away, it's not easy, yeah, because they just don't get the sense and everything. So that's where this education can come forward. And maybe, I mean, the education here means that the parents has to have to tell, or have to teach their children that environment is actually our best friend, it's actually our family. So because what I see now for human, most of human thinks that human Homo sapiens, yeah, our species uh, is the dominant, is the main actor, yeah, is the most important things in life, the most important species on earth. We are not, yeah. We just become something important is actually when human can find, if we talk about the anthropology, a human find fire, they can finally fight in the forest and everything, and then we can use our mind to develop the technology and so on. And because this, we become the most powerful species. But before, we are nothing actually. Yeah, we are nothing if compared with tiger, if we compare with the bear, if we compare with other huge creatures. So the thing is, if people can, of course, yeah, we need open for this, like our problem now with the industrial agriculture, or industry of farming and so on. Do we really need that? Yeah, do we really need that? Can't we try to look to our environment, to what we have in our just near us, yeah, and then try to develop this, yeah, in our like society, or in our community, in our area. So then each country can also have their own something that they can pride of, and that's become something that people maybe will want to have a look. If we want to have something, then maybe we should go to Philippines, because we don't need something to just so many things to be export and import, and then it becomes, of course, carbon emission and so on. Because we actually can try to go back to our nature and try to understand, and maybe just develop what we have inside. That's also for our society, and maybe also with yeah, with all the development, yeah, that now happens with the green energy and so on. We also need to really careful and still critically thinking with all this development. It's good, it's for reducing carbon emission and so on, but please don't make biodiversity and environment become the collateral damage in the process. So I think we really need to understand in the first place what's the importance of our environment, why it's really, really something that we need to, to gain, to see more and understand more and do something for it. And it's just not because some government things or industrial things or company things that it's just for some uh, groups, yeah, for the benefit of some group, but it's actually not for all humankind. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Puji. I'm 100% with you. So I think the first thing that you mentioned is about education. I really agree with this because I grew up in the city and I'm quite out of touch with the nature. So it's important to bring it up since you're young. And the second thing is that it's everyone's responsibility, and we need to look at ourselves and you know strike a balance between our needs and the environment. Thank you so much for that. So how about you, Zai? What do you think? Like, what is it like in the Philippines?
For me, the root cause of the forest problems in our country is our economy, especially this time of pandemic. Like, um, a lot of people, our countrymen, lost their jobs in this pandemic since last year, and since we have to find other ways to support our family and support and to sustain our lives, like a lot of people think of other ways, like indoor plant business became a hit in our country, like the plantitos and the plantitas, and they want the rare the plant, the higher the price. So due to this, a lot of people went to forest to gather plants to propagate, which is very illegal in our country. And a lot of cases of illegal poaching for rare plants has been reported in our agency. Then we can blame them because we are all just want to survive this pandemic, and the only way to and the only help that we are seeing right now is the forest that we are living in. And the rampant corruption in our country, such as the personal interests and the under the table deals of the powerful people in our country, that concerning the forest areas of our country. Like, there are reports of the private claims in our country with, I can disclose this one because this is really a critical case in some of the areas in our country. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Zai. So I definitely agree that basic or general knowledge should include awareness, or maybe even just knowing how to value and give importance to our forests and even natural resources. So again, thank you, Dr. Puji and Zai, for sharing your thoughts on this topic. This is something that we must always consider when we talk about the problems faced by our forests, the root cause of the issues. So today, we are having this episode in line with the 2021 World Environment Day. This year's theme, Ecosystem Restoration, means preventing, halting, and reversing this damage, going from exploiting nature to healing it. This World Environment Day will kick off the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, a global mission to revive billions of hectares from forests to farmlands, from the top of the mountains to the depths of the sea. So I want to ask this question to Ms. Ann and Dika. Why do we need to start restoring our forests? Why are the forest ecosystems in your country important? What is their role in biodiversity? And how about human communities? Miss Anne, what can you say about this?
Um, First of all, I can say that because the Philippines is let's say top five in climate risk um, prone countries in the world. We have the fifth largest coastline in the world. So we are already, even geographically at a disadvantage, actually. So we have about 24 storms a year minimum, causing billions of pesos of damage. So that's how important it is to us. It's also a major source of food and water. fresh water. A lot of our fish pens rely on the oceans, on the health of the oceans, and livelihood. The poorest of the poor in the Philippines come from farming, fisheries, and forestry. They are the poorest by far. So that's how important it is to us. It not only supplies urban centers with food and water, but actually it's the source of livelihood of the poorest of the poor. So I'm not saying that we can't, do it without them, but since they're already there in the field, we have to empower them. What you say in education, they cannot afford to wait another generation to make change possible. So we have to work with those that we have already, because we are at past the tipping point, I think. So I think a lot of our efforts, given that the government cannot do it themselves, and we know that because of the corruption, state of corruption and incompetence and whatever. It's no excuse. Basically, it means that civil society, therefore, we are the ones educated, must therefore take action. The onus lies on us. To be sustainable starts with us, in our home, in our schools, in our offices. So therefore, although we do lobby government for change, no, and we try to empower national empowerment projects through capacity building, it takes time for that to materialize. 3 years for a new project. So at the same time as we lobby government for change, we can also bring in the international sector. We get a lot of funding from international agencies that are more interested than our own people in protecting our environment, So that also puts pressure on everybody. And also I see worldwide, I think it's the top 20, I can't mention their names, but the top 20 largest food FMCG, are the biggest plastic producers, for example. They themselves are also feeling consumer pressure. So you see, basically all these actors are coming into play. Everybody is doing their part because we're panicking. We're all in panic, let's face it. And so therefore it's a concerted effort, I think. And the significance is that if we don't do this together now, we will have another pandemic and we will not survive. I'm pretty sure of that. That 20-year deadline or 2030 deadline that everybody is talking about, I'm sorry, but that's just falsely optimistic at the rate we're going, okay? So, I don't want to sound fatalistic either, no? I'm saying that the only way to change it is not only to start in our homes, but to do it together. That's the only way. Large-scale planting, large-scale to make up for the lost time, what else can we do? Give up? No. So that's really the only message I have. So in other words, when we design our projects, even our NGO, even though it's very small, our impact, but what we try to design is a sustainable project that can be replicated in other parts of the country, can be scaled up, is designed on best practice for the community, by the community, multi-stakeholder, all the science of development and forestry must be there. The leadership, all the ingredients. Otherwise, we shouldn't do it. Why plant if what you're doing is not going to survive, So everything we do must be sustainable moving forward, in other words. And every stakeholder we get in, and if they're not, then you find another one. Because thankfully, every part of society feels the urgency to help. And some of them, even some companies, don't know how. So I think that's where people like us, ourselves here, play a big role. Personally, I feel the need to, I feel that we should also trigger media, mass media in this campaign, radio, because this is what a lot of Filipinos listen to. And also mainstream media, the papers, they're so busy talking about politics that nobody cares about. It's time to put these messages in. And to be honest, they will respond when it comes from you, when it comes from the youth. They don't listen to Greenpeace anymore. I'm sorry. They don't listen to activists, but they do listen to people like Greta and yourselves demanding change. So don't underestimate your power, I would say. Keep at it. Consolidate yourselves. Consolidate across the ASEAN region even, and then you have a voice for change.
Thank you so much, Miss Anne, for giving a wake-up call to everyone, including our current viewers. I agree that the youth is powerful and we all know it. I support you also in your statement that we, those who are aware of what's happening, should do something sustainable within our capacity, which can also help others and may also even empower them. So, how about you, Dika? What can you
Yeah.
say?
I think Miss Anne says it all. For Indonesia, I think I need to point it out first that because of its geographical locations, uh, there's always saying that Indonesia has an extremely high level of biodiversity and endemicity. But if we didn't do nothing, it will all gone, and it's already gone in a rapid, yeah, and it's going to be a tale one day. Oh, how what does orangutan look like? You can only show picture, you can't see orangutan anymore, and they're extinct in the nature, not now, but if we didn't do anything in the future they might extinct. And um, there's a lot of sometimes we forgot the importance of forest. Forest plays a lot of key role, just like Anne has mentioned, in food security, human health, even the pandemic that we face right now. It's because we are so greedy, you know because we keep wanting more and wanting more, and then yeah, it became, we're in the situations where we at now. So like livelihood, we also depending on the forest for livelihood, providing clean water. In some areas of the national park that we were working, some of the areas they're buying water. I've never seen anything like that before, because the water that they seen, they cannot consume it because it's not clean water. So even for me right now in here in Timor Island, we don't really have very pristine forest like in Borneo and in Sumatra. So I have to buy water, for drinking, for bathing, for a lot of things. So is this the life that we want to live in the future? And everyone talking about moving to Mars. I mean, we have, yeah, it's crazy, yeah, that's how important our forest is. And it's not just about protecting biodiversity, it's also for food security, human health, livelihood, um, you know, and other important services. So yeah, I think that's for me.
Thank you so much, Dika. Yeah, like a lot of things are really interlinked. We often like don't really realize about it because it's quite out of touch in our life. But yeah, I agree that it's really important for us to look at what are the ramifications. Um, so once again, thank you to all the speakers, Miss Anne, Dika, Dr. Puji, and Zai, for giving us a brief overview of the things happening in the forest in our region. I'm very sure that our viewers on Facebook Live become more aware of the realities of our forests. And I also know that many of them, if not all, are inspired and motivated to take action to protect, conserve, and restore our forests. But for now, we will take a short break from the discussion to give a few reminders.
So last Monday, we wrapped up the Plastic Free Agenda Phase 1 of our anti-single-use plastic campaign, What's Up? Through 17 weekly challenges spread out over the month, we worked for hand in hand to hashtag single out single use. Imbued with a sense of agency and urgency, we finally began to transition our personal efforts and collective action towards systemic change, which is what phase 2 of our campaign will focus on. The month started easy, but as the challenges progressed, especially during week or hell week or hell month of school and universities, accomplishing the missions of the plastic free agenda became no easy feat. Thus, we would like to give the biggest congratulations to our top performing agents of change. So let's give it up for our plastic banisher bronze third place, Guaim Tormes. For our second place, our single out single use silver surfer, Adrian Kaisip. And for our planet's protector from plastic, for the first place, we have Alexis Concordia. Congratulations, everyone, and we'll see you all on phase 2.
Woohoo! Congratulations to all three. The next one will be in celebration of Philippine Environment Month, Wayfarers and the Climate Reality Project Philippines present a pair of fora entitled Niche, My Place in the Climate Space. A niche is defined as the ecological role of an organism in a community. Find your niche in the climate movement at Niche Fora 2021. The event will allow participants to explore the different niches in the climate and environmental movement that they could occupy if they want to be part of it. Details of the registration will be on the social media pages of the Climate Reality Project Philippines and Wayfarers.
Let your voices be heard and attend the branch meetup to be conducted by the Climate Reality Project Philippines this June 16. We'll be in touch with you in the coming weeks for more details about this event. Also, help map out and plan the programs and activities of the Climate Reality Project Philippines by joining your clusters meeting and strategic planning sessions. For June, we hope to engage with the following clusters: climate smart industries and services, human security, water sufficiency, and food security. If you belong to any of these clusters, watch out for announcements from the branch on the scheduled sessions.
And there are also reminders for our climate reality leaders. For the upcoming events between the Climate Reality Project Philippines and the Climate Reality Project Indonesia, wait for the reminders from the youth leads of each branch.
So let's now move to the next portion of our show this afternoon, the virtual tour. And by the way, I don't know if you have noticed, but my partner and I came prepared for this virtual tour. Just look at our attire. In this segment, we will virtually visit different forest ecosystems in our region, specifically in the Philippines and Indonesia.
That's right, Demi. We'll virtually explore the different forests to be shared with us by our speakers in the segment. Southeast Asia is home to 3 of the 17 mega diverse countries: the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. The region is also teeming with ecological hotspots and ecologically important areas. Conservation International considers Indonesia to be one of the 17 mega diverse countries, with 2 of the world's 25 hotspots, 18 World Wildlife Fund's Global 200 ecoregions, and 24 of BirdLife International's endemic bird areas.
On the other hand, the Philippines is one of 18 mega biodiverse countries globally, containing two-thirds of the Earth's biodiversity and between 70% and 80% of the world's plant and animal species. The Philippines is also one of the world's biodiversity hotspots with at least 700 threatened species, making it one of the top global conservation areas. Now let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the beauty of our forests. Miss Anne, would you like to be the first one to give us a tour?
Sorry, how did you want to do that? What do you mean? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Miss Anne.
Yes, what was your question? Sorry.
Would you mind to be the first one giving us a tour?
Yeah, how would you like me to do that?
You will present.
Okay.
Sure.
Hold on. Let me just
Take it away, Miss Anne.
let me just open my file, yeah, just a minute. Hold on. I will show you the part of the Sierra Madre, okay? If that's all right, just a short video. Let me try and share screen. Just tell me if you see, yeah?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Can you hear it? Did you hear the music?
No, we can't hear the audio.
Okay. Okay, tell me if you hear it.
Yeah, we can hear it, but it's quite soft.
Can you hear it? Well, anyway, you can read it.
If that's better, thank you.
Perfect.
It's actually 9,000 hectares, not 10 hectares, this part. So now we're going to go out into the forest. Okay, so did you catch that? Hello? Hello?
Yep.
Right, so yeah, I just wanted to show you a bit of what our Sierra Madre looks like. We only plant their native trees. It's just to bring us into the forest. I'm sure a lot of us maybe have not had the chance because of the pandemic to do so. But that's where we plant. That's one of the sites, basically. Um, so let me now share a. Has anyone ever been up there from here? No? All right. Okay, let me now share another slide here, if I can find it. Just really briefly, I don't have too many slides actually, okay? All right. Can you see my screen? What can you see? Not yet?
It's still the YouTube.
Yes, it's still on YouTube.
Oh, okay. So I should pause that. Stop it first, no? Stop share. Okay, and then I'll open another new share again, no?
Yep.
Right. Right. So can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Let me just go straight to this slide. Okay. So can you see this? The PH, Philippines most at risk index. Can everyone see that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so basically, I mean, this is only one informed globe risk index, but amongst all of them, we are up there along with Indonesia, but the rest of our neighbors basically. So, okay. All right. Now, this is basically a slide I wanted to share. It's actually from our friends at Haribona Foundation, kind of a pictorial of the what the Satoyama Initiative is calling sustainable landscape and seascape management. This is the slide that we use to talk to our communities about the totality of the ecosystem. We're entering now the decade, and so depending on whatever community we're working with, for example, upland forests or midland agroforestry, downstream up to the coastal mangroves and corals, these are programs that FIDA is working on to kind of develop, I guess, community-based, livelihood-based programs for those forest dwellers to sustain themselves, no? So we're doing that in collaboration. Depends on the site and the location, but it's something we've seen that works in different parts of the country when, let's say, even indigenous tribal communities have been taught to plant, for example, coffee plantations, when they have been organized into cooperatives, they have achieved actually great success. And the thing is that these are new projects that have not even been well documented. They are now currently running as, let's say, social enterprises. Okay, and there's a reason we also don't always document in terms of scientific output or even commercial, because sometimes we get interference from government or private sector trying to block our efforts, So I'm just giving that as a example of the type of intervention that we are trying to design now moving forward are those that can be copy and pasted. Yeah. All the ingredients are in place, all of the leadership capabilities are in place, the resource capacities, and then we try to bridge the financing, the monitoring, the maintenance in what we call climate change action programs. Okay. I'm sure everybody is familiar with these ecosystem services, but at the end of the day, we are talking about why the forests matter. Well, as several of us here on the call today shared, it's the livelihood source, and oftentimes local communities are not aware. So this is where we have to start, because they are there anyway, and we should do that together in a transformational way with private sector. And oftentimes it's organizations, I guess. There has to be a connector, somebody that connects funding with beneficiary, and preferably an independent third party to do that. These are just pictures of some of the communities out there. The forest guards, we have here mangrove, we have Bantay Dagat, as we call them, coastal guardians of the sea. And now we go into, we also have coral forests. We are the world's third most coral rich after Indonesia and Australia. This is the volume kilometers of reef systems, species, and fish species surviving on or living with these keystone species. Which is why we said, okay, we then must train fishermen and coastal communities in coral propagation. And did you know that when we held training for several of them, that even the surfing community who managed the coastline, even they had never seen underwater with goggles. Can you imagine? And we have a large, about 20% of our 30% of our fishing population, who are the poorest of the poor, had never seen what it looked like underwater, didn't even know the functions of coral. So we said, okay, we have to start there. So for our tactic in the Philippines, also, I think private sector and government are now looking, and civil society, it's not so much now the volume that we're looking to reforest, it's more the quality of the intervention. Okay, so it's about, I think, with the limited time and resources we have, it's about finding these kind of also, I guess, keystone solutions that can have a spillover effect, like a pay it forward effect, So this is, for example, we trained one surfing community in La Union. Suddenly, all the surfing communities and fishing communities around those surfing communities in all parts of the country, now they also want to be trained. So it's kind of having that kind of impact where you create the environment for the community to want to improve, So these are just pictures of those trainings. We trained so far 56 of them, and now each of these 56 can go on to train other communities, you know. So this is what we had to do. So what everybody knows, train the trainers, no? So that's a skill that needs to be put in place. So that's pretty much all I would like to say at this point. You know, you've already given all the data and statistics about the Philippine state of forest. It's something I'm also studying now in my PhD in development forestry. And what a lot of our forestry experts are telling us is that even they also are relying on youth to change things. Okay. And that we cannot rely on science alone. We cannot rely on policy, government policy alone. We can't rely on funding alone. It must be a consolidated group, collaborated effort across multi-sector and multi-stakeholder. And how do we do that? Well, the only way, again, is to really design actually national, not just greening programs, but now more bottom-up efforts in reforestation. What we did is what happened actually, as one of our colleagues mentioned earlier, that during the pandemic, a big movement of what we call plantitos plantitas, there was a sudden surge until now in the interest to plant, even in urban centers, in private homes, etc. So we have to capitalize on that. Now that there is a greater awareness, environment is sexy work for people, and everybody feels that they have to be a part of it. So we have to find ways. I'm showing you these programs because these are ways to make it interesting. Yeah, it's also fitness. It's psychological benefits out there. We have here yoga for forests. To make it interesting for people to go out. A lot of them, like the call centers, are afraid. They don't know. They've lived in cities their whole lives. They have no idea. They're afraid of snakes. They're the littlest things. You see, so we have to inform all sectors, yeah. And a lot of our problem now, also in the Philippines, the government, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources is primarily, as well as the Department of Agriculture, are responsible for the production of seedlings, of native, heirloom, indigenous Philippine seedlings, okay, for everything from forest trees to mangroves, as well as Department of Agriculture is doing veggie and fruit bearing and flowering trees and crops. And I'll tell you, there is a huge shortage across the country in private sector, commercial nurseries. So what we often like to recommend is that everybody must then preserve and nurture their own seeds and seedlings, because when you run out of that, well, then you're stuck, Yeah, and then another thing which I think the Climate Reality Project is doing very well is to involve youth in our efforts. We often find that, if we're talking to senior, for example, corporates and organizations in the private sector, them to change their ways. But when we approach public elementary schools, for example, they're very keen to learn new ways and very open to change their habits. So for us in the Philippines, being a highly youth-driven population, a lot of our effort must focus on the youth to change things structurally. Because, you will be moving into society, in all segments of society moving forward. You're the ones that can change it with corporates. So that's the main part. Again, as we say in forestry, the easy part is the planting, the hard part is the monitoring and the maintenance. Make sure that there's data capture, evidence that what you're planting is surviving, is transforming the community, also is providing them with livelihood. That takes time, of course, 3 to 5 years, depending on what you're planting, to prove that there is transformative change in your community. And we can only do that by being transparent about our efforts and documenting them, making it available in public spaces, on websites, social media, etc., just to show that we are making change. Okay. And then from our side, we also work on a lot of legislation in the Philippines. A lot of parties are instrumental in, for example, the latest one is you can't graduate without planting. I think it's 10 trees now before your graduation. So every student up to the grade 12, college and uni, has to plant trees before they graduate. Okay. So fortunately, we've been able to plant throughout the pandemic thanks to agroforesters who are also considered part of the frontliners team because of their food security work. This is more about feed, really. I think that's all pretty much I can say at the moment. Again, I always go back to ourselves as individuals, part of a family unit, a school unit, a community ourselves, that this is where we can make change possible, starting with us. Okay, that's it. I hope that sheds some light on things more than just data.
Thank you so much, Miss Anne. It's really heartwarming to see your amazing efforts and programs. Um, I think we'll go next to Zai, who will go deeper into the Sierra Madre mountain range. Uh, Zai, would you like to bring us there?
Uh, can we share my presentation, please? Okay, let me share you my favorite mountain range, the Sierra Madre mountain range. Next slide, please. So it's also known as the backbone of Luzon. Sierra Madre is the longest mountain range in the Philippines. It covers the northeast coast of Luzon Island, serving as natural shield against typhoons coming from the Pacific Ocean. It has a land area of approximately 1.4 million hectares spanning 10 provinces: the Cagayan, Isabela, Nueva Vizcaya, Quirino, Nueva Ecija, Aurora, Bulacan, Rizal, Laguna, and Quezon. It also encompasses the greatest number of protected areas in the country, all in all 60, all 68, including national parks, watershed forest reserves, natural monuments, marine reserves, protected landscapes, and seascapes. Next slide, please. And these are the endemic flora and fauna species present in the area. So the fauna, the flora species, other than the Hopea species, the Diptero species, which are endemic in the area, we we also have the Phalaenopsis, Luedemaniana, the Dromiomyderi, the only orchid species that can be found in the Sierra Madre mountain range, and our very own Nepenthes ventricosa that will be found in Sierra Madre mountain range, especially in the northern part of the mountain range. And for the fauna species, we have two monitored lizards such as the Varanus bitatawa and the Varanus olivaceus. And and lastly, the Sierra Madre forest mouse, which is the Apomis sherrae. And these I will share to you these photos from my past fieldwork. So these are the photos I gathered during my fieldwork in the Quezon province as part of the SMMR. The landscape is surrounded with rich seas and clean river that you may drink directly from the source. I was with the children of our organization, the Ita communities, in the Barangay Sablang, General Nacarcason, one of the indigenous peoples, and along with also rescued the Sandro 2 years ago. And yes, thank you. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Zai. Being more impactful and inviting more people to make a change and become better is definitely inspiring. And thank you for giving us more information about Sierra Madre, especially for those who haven't been there yet. So let's take a flight to Indonesia. Dika, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, um, our organizations work closely with Gunung Palung National Park. And the title of my presentation is Gunung Palung National Park, Safeguarding Biodiversity and Human Existence. Next slide, please. So Gunung Palung National Park lies on the islands of Borneo in the Indonesian province of West Kalimantan. Next slide. Yeah, so it's not immediately designated as a national park. So the park was created in 1937 as a forest nature reserve. So the size is 30,000 hectares in the beginning, and then expanding to 90,000 hectares, and then currently with 108,000 hectares. So this is the last trip that I did to Gunung Palung National Park. Yeah, so when we go to the national park, either by foot or by boat. Um, yeah. So the last time we went there by boat because it's still in the rainy season, so the water level of the river it's enough to support for us to go by boat. So as you can see, it's very unique. It's almost like in the movie for me, really. There's a lot of pandanus vegetations before we reach the and enter the forest part of the park. And this is actually inside when we inside of the park. So as you can see, the ecosystem is very different. Yeah, and then you can hear, along the way, you can hear the proboscis monkey were like jumping on the edge, and then you can see some of them. I'll show you what proboscis monkey look like on my next slide. So yeah, the Gunung Palung National Park, the variety of ecosystems, it's including mangrove forest, swamp forest, pit swamp forest, freshwater swamp forest, lowland, and until to mountain forest that always shrouded in mist. So the forest it's one of the complete ecosystems in Indonesia and probably in Asia. So next slide, please. It holds significant value, as you can see in these pictures. It's the source of it's a source of water for the community surrounding the national park. And as you can see here, this pictures taking from Lubuk Baji. So you can see it's highly fragmented as well. There's a village, not village, rice fields, and then there's a little bit gap here. This is the corridor that we've been working for several years now. Try to bring or try to connect this side of the forest to other side of the forest. You know, and then next slide, please. And the Gunung Palung National Park, it has the best and most extensive Dipterocarp's tropical forest in Kalimantan. And about 65% of the area is still primary forest, undisturbed by human activity, and it's rich in plant and wildlife communities. So plants species like Diera costulata or Jelutung, Shoria, Parasoria, and other species are find can be easily found in the park, and they can reach up to 70 above 70 meters in diameter. So they're like giant tree that look like this. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the pictures that I took from the forest. This is near the camp where we camped at the time. So as you can see, the water, it's still fresh and clean. You can even directly drink the water from the river. And then these Shorea trees, they really big. And these dipterocarp species, they actually the backbone of the forest. They kind of like the main structure of the forest that, uh, yeah, help the forest to grow. Next slide, please. Yeah, there's even another species other than the pterocarp species. This species called ulin or Bornean ironwood. The species that has been studied for a while now, and this species, the distributions of this species actually from southern part of Sumatra to Borneo, and then to part of it would be in Palawan. I think, yeah, in Palawan province, but it's considered rare and extinct in nature in Palawan in the Philippines, which is really sad because I was when I did literature study, I would love to visit Philippines to also see the species in the Philippines because of the wide range of distributions of the species. But then sadly, it's considered extinct in the nature there. This is, as you can see, I look really tiny. Even I'm quite chubby and then quite big, but then still very tiny and small compared to the trees. And when we did genetic analysis, we found out that even to 20 kilometers or 20 kilometers to 30 kilometers from this tree, there's always genetic relations or correlations. So it's I think it's safe to say that most of the ironwood trees that we found nearby are somehow linked to this particular trees. So this is kind of like the mother trees of all the trees that found in the area. Um, Next slide, please. And also one of very unique species that can be found in the national park is the black orchid, and this can be seen in particular of February to April, and it lies in the shape of, it's very unique because of the shape of its flower, and it marked by green with black spots in the center, and it blooms last for 5 to 6 days only. So yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, and it's also home for orangutan. I think there's some calculations that's been studied that it's approximately uh, 20, not 20, 2,500 wild Bornean orangutan still exist in the forest. And yeah, and the orangutan is considered the umbrella species for conservations in Gunung Palung National Park. And it's also one of the important species for seed dispersal and seed predations. Next slide, please. And many more endemic fauna. This is proboscis monkey that I just mentioned to you earlier. So they're very unique characteristic to have really long nose. And there's also Bornean gray gibbon. So this gray gibbon, I took this picture when it was really long day, and then I just sat down and then have my quick meal, and then this gibbon came to say hi, and I just I took my camera out of my pocket, and then taking the pictures, and then it's very entertaining, because after a long day, and I just sit there, and then somehow this gray gibbon sort of like know that I need some entertainment, and then he came there and then just posed, when I took the pictures of him. So yeah, it's very special moment. Next, please. And also other species that are very important I think in mainly in Borneo, it's hornbill. So like helmeted hornbill and other hornbill. This is one of the endemic species to the island. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then it's very unique in Borneo because when we compare it to Sumatra or other island in Indonesia, there are no largest predator. So this is the largest predator that exists in Borneo. It's called cloud leopard. And because it's very different when we were in Sumatra or in Java. We have Sumatran tiger, and we have Java tiger that now extinct. But in Borneo, there are no big predators in the forest. And another unique species is also Malay mouse deer. And next. Next slide. Yeah, and giant Malayan turtle. Can be found in the river, and also sun bear. Next slide, please. So Gunung Palung National Park. So most of the community, surrounding Gunung Palung National Park, either a farmer or a fisherman, and we work closely with this community, and then because they're the one that that life really depending on the forest. Um, so we work closely with them, and then from our baseline survey in 2007, we found out that one of the roots of the forest destruction and forest degradations is because of the health access. Next slide, please. So our organization is called ASRI, or Alam Sehat Lestari. We are one of the NGO that working closely with the community in the region. So in 2007, we did radical listening with the community. So we want to understand what is the root of the cause of the problem. And then community mentioned two things that they would like to improve, two things that they would like to have. It's highly affordable access healthcare, and then a training in organic farming. So we did that, and in return, we asked community to help us to preserve the forests on their surroundings. So in 2007, we built our community clinics, or now become hospital, and we provide medical service to the community. And next slide, please. And in our clinic, they can come even if they don't have money, because most of the community are categorized as poor community. It doesn't matter, because then they can pay with non-cash payment systems. They can pay with manure, they can pay with rice husks, they can pay with seeds, they can pay with seedlings, which will be contribute to other program. Rice husk and manure will be contributed to our sustainable organic farming program, and then seeds and seedling will be contributes to our restorations or reforestations program. And the community, they're not just contribute to their health of the health of themselves, because they can be regularly check on their health, but also they can contribute to to the environment. Next slide, please. And then we also help and then work with the community, with community development. So try to find other livelihoods that are not really always depending on the forest. So we work with widows. We gave them goats that they can nurture. And then we train community with sustainable organic farming, and even with loggers or previous loggers that are still having a chainsaw, but they don't have any, they don't have any educations, or they don't have any ability to look for other jobs. They can come to us. They only they only have a chainsaw, and then we bought their chainsaw, and then in return, we will give them funds to start up a new businesses, sustainable businesses that can help to support them and their family. Next slides, please. Yeah, and then we also did restoration. So as you can see, from really an open land that regularly burn every year, to restored forest. And so far, we've successfully restored 180 hectares of forest, and it will continue. It will counting more in the future as we working closely with Gunung Palung National Park office. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's all from my side, and this is one of our staff took this picture in the early morning when we're about to go to really remote areas within the range of the national park to give healthcare to the isolated and very remote community. So yeah, it's a very tiring project, and there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of problems that we need to address, but in the end, it will give it gives us a lot of hope and a lot of grateful feelings, when we're working with this community. And it's so good to see the community are more healthy than they was before, and then they can relying on us to for the health, and also we can work together to save the forest. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Oh, lovely, Dika. I think I'm not too far from you. I'm at the Tanjung Puting
Oh yeah,
National Park. Yeah.
we're neighbor.
Yeah. Meet my friends in the background. They're quite shy, but yeah, the Probowskis and the orangutans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we continue, there's a question from the audience from Ian Mabitasan. He didn't catch the species name of the tree that was extinct in the Palawan, Philippines. Could you repeat what the name of the
Oh,
tree?
it's Eusideroxylon zwageri. That's how we call it in Indonesia. It's called Bornean ironwood.
Ironwood. Yeah.
Ironwood.
Mhm. I hope you caught that, Ian. Thank you for that, Dika. Now we are on to our last destination. Let's go, Dr. Puji. Where are you bringing us? You're still muted, sorry.
For a walk, yeah, in one of the forests in Sumatra. So I think I will. So I think better I share first before because I also have a video actually. So I don't know. Shall we put the video first or video later?
Video first.
Video first. So maybe maybe Kate can help me. So this is just for so you can get the real virtual tour, yeah, to visit Batang Toru
Pada
ecosystem.
akhir 2017, dunia dikejutkan oleh penemuan spesies kera besar baru di Pulau Sumatera. Ongot tapanuliensis, orangutan tapanuli. Spesies orangutan baru ini hanya hidup di ekosistem Batang Toru yang membentang di 3 kabupaten Tapanuli.
I think can close all the others open windows.
Hutan-hutan yang indah ini adalah rumah terakhir bagi orangutan Tapanuli. Ekosistem Batang Toru atau dalam bahasa Batak disebut Harangan Tapanuli adalah kawasan hutan seluas 150.000 hektar yang hampir seluruhnya adalah hutan primer.
Nama saya Karisma Dewi, saya dari Bekasi. Saya adalah peneliti orangutan Tapanuli di ILSCP di Stasiun Riset Batang Toru. Kegiatan kita sehari-hari adalah monitoring mencari orangutan. Karena di sini orangutannya liar, jadi kita eksplor ke dalam hutan mencari, dan ketika kita menemukan kita akan mengikuti dia dari sarang sampai ke sarang selama 5 atau 10 hari gitu. Kita tidak ingin terlalu lama mengikuti satu individu orangutan karena kita ingin mereka tetap liar seperti itu. Kita tidak ingin mereka terlalu terbiasa dengan manusia tapi tetap bisa kita monitor. Orangutan tapanuli ini dianggap berbeda dengan spesies yang lain berdasarkan genetika, morfologi, dan juga perilaku sosial termasuk suara, vokalisasi jantan atau yang sering kita sebut dengan longkol. Orangutan tapanuli juga memiliki komposisi genetik yang sebenarnya lebih dekat kepada orangutan Kalimantan daripada orangutan Sumatera. Bahkan sekarang kita mungkin bisa bilang bahwa orangutan tapanuli ini adalah leluhur dari seluruh populasi orangutan yang ada sekarang. Habitat orangutan tapanuli saat ini yang tersisa kebanyakan ada di hutan dataran tinggi, walaupun kepadatan mereka paling tinggi berada di lembah Sungai Batang Toru, di mana masih dapat ditemukan sisa habitat terakhir di dataran rendah. Di hutan dataran rendah memiliki tanah yang lebih subur sehingga produktivitas hutannya menjadi lebih tinggi dan juga kepadatan orangutan tapanulinya menjadi lebih tinggi di seluruh ekosistem Batang Toru. Di daerah dataran tinggi itu memiliki ragam jenis pohon yang berbeda dengan hutan yang ada di dataran rendah. Mungkin itu juga yang mempengaruhi pakan dari orangutan tapanuli yang sedikit lebih unik dibandingkan dengan orangutan yang lain, seperti buah dan biji dari jenis yang khas seperti atur mangan dan sampinur tali yang hanya dimakan oleh orangutan tapanuli.
Okay, maybe a bit faster. Yeah, okay. Just maybe a bit faster and then again. Yeah, okay, then. Thank you. Okay, there's just a little introduction, about the new species actually in Sumatra. So now in Sumatra we have two orangutans, not just Sumatran orangutans, but the Tapanuli orangutans. Okay, so I will try to share my screen. I hope you will get the feeling of we just have a nice time walking inside the forest of Harangan Tapanuli or in Batang Toru ecosystem. So Harangan Tapanuli is actually from bahasa from Batak language, from the indigenous language. The meaning is hutan Tapanuli or Tapanuli forest. So in Tapanuli forest, so where is this forest? Where is Harangan Tapanuli or the Batang Toru ecosystem? So if you see the map here, I show you the Indonesian map, and then we have the Sumatra Island, and then we look a bit closer in the North Sumatra in here, and then just right on the tip down of Lake Toba, the famous Lake Toba, we have actually three districts there, the North Tapanuli, Center, and South Tapanuli. So the Batang Toru ecosystem lies between these three districts. So what is the fun fact from this Batang Toru ecosystem? Very unique actually, because we have lots of study going on and also already reported that Batang Toru ecosystem have a very unique biodiversity, and this is might due to the impact from the tectonic plates and also the ancient volcano eruption. So our famous Lake Toba before is actually a mountain. So you can imagine if we have Lake Toba that really large, right? If you have maybe you already been in Indonesia and visiting Lake Toba, it's really a large lake. So you can imagine how big the mountain before, because that is just the just after the eruption, what's now become the lake. So it happened around 18,000 years ago. So through the era and the time, it's developing and shaping the very unique biodiversity in this area. And then Batang Toru ecosystem also cover around 15,000 hectares primary forest, as mentioned before, and it has 9 water catchment through the rivers and so on. 8 water catchment, it goes to the Indian Ocean, and then 1 goes to the Malacca Strait. Batang Toru ecosystem also the home of the unique tropical highland forests. We have so many unique families, also ancient families of the tree, like Podocarpaceae. We have a lot of lots in there because it's a very highland, dry highland forest. And then it's also home for almost 30 bat species, yeah, inside. Also, it's homes of 311 bird species, yeah, and probably we also have a species that new actually to Sumatra, yeah. Before we never seen it, and now we found it, yeah. What we call the two-barred warbler. And of course, yeah, it's also home of the new name orangutan species, the Pongo tapanuliensis, that we just announced in 2017. But sadly, just announced in 2017 directly go to critically endangered species by IUCN because it has only like 400 until maximum 800 individual in the small area of Batang Toru ecosystem. Besides those species, yeah, we also have a lot of exotic animals, yeah, inside this small ecosystem. Basically, we still have the Sumatran tiger there, and also tapir, yeah, these very unique mammals that is not really easy to find, but sometimes if you're lucky, if you go to the ecosystem, you might find one, yeah. You might want to find this one, but not the Sumatran tiger, yeah, in the wild. Okay, and we also have lots of endemic and exotic herpetofauna or reptiles and amphibians in Batang Toru ecosystem, yeah. One is this new species, Nauli dwarf frog, yeah, that's just announced in 2014. And then this beautiful horn frog, yeah, and this one is also endemic, yeah, only we can find it there, Caluela foltzi. And then this also beautiful freshwater turtles, actually, yes, Spiniterapin, and it also has the status for endangered right now, this endemic lizards, and this one, yeah. So maybe you will say, is this a snake or something else? What do you think, Grisel? Is this snake or something else? Of course, it's not a snake. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not good at guessing game.
Yeah, because I already put it there. Yeah, this is one of the lizard. Yeah, so this is a very rare endemic species, the Wagner's glass lizard. Yeah. Okay, and besides fauna, we also have lots of endemic exotic flora as well in the area. A few examples I show here. We have this vulnerable species of Aquilaria hirta, also Cattleya corniculata, Dipterocarpus crinitus, and Driobalanops sumatrensis. Yeah, that is for the vulnerable species. For the endemic species, protected and endemic, we have this Nepenthes sumatrana, and then also Acrotrema costratum. And record for mainland Sumatra is for Dipterocarpus penangianus, and as well as these two endemics, Hotea tapanuliensis and Macrolenes tuberculata. So that one is this, yeah, that's the two endemics in the Batang Toru ecosystem. Also we have the endangered and critically endangered. Yeah, this one, the endangered is Fatica peracensis, and the critically endangered is the Sorea johorensis. Yeah, this one. So, and many more actually. Yeah, this is just some examples. And of course, it's just not about flora and fauna, yeah, but we also have others than that, which goes maybe into the like a fungi or algae, yeah, and in the ecosystem we still find many lichens, which is actually it's good, yeah, because we know lichen has a role as like the environment signal, yeah. So if your environment still good, you might see lots of lichen in the forest or in your environment. But if your environment is already bad, then most tree has no lichen anymore, yeah. And then also a few species, yeah, for fungi like Ganoderma and others. So this ecosystem is really rich actually. And inside the ecosystem or the Batang Toru ecosystem, of course, we're not just talking about flora and fauna, yeah, the biodiversity that inside, but also we talk about the human that lives, in the surrounding area. And it's actually the same, like in Kalimantan, yeah, and other places. The local and indigenous people there, they are farmers and also fishermen. Yeah, it depends on where they are. If they are closely to the river, so of course they are fishermen. But if they are closely just on land, so they become the farmers, and they're still doing this, the traditional farming methods, yeah, and things like that. So we have like 130,000 Batak people live in the adjacent to the ecosystem, and it's not only Batak people but also Nias people living in the area. And there are so many NGOs and of course also local working groups involved in managing the conservation program in the area. So me and with my partner from Yale, yeah, from the video before, we have this like we call it a research station inside the protected forests, yeah, and yeah, this is how we try to manage to monitor not only the great species, the orangutan, but also others. Animals and plants, yeah, and then yeah. So this is just the pictures, part of the community. So we also work together with the local youth, yeah, in the area. So they can get the sense, they can learn that the Batang Toru ecosystem is really important. It's just not just talking about the forest as a, let's say, as a world lungs or others than that, but it's just really close to our lives. That if you protect the forest, then actually, your main life is depends on it. So you can still harvest sustainably fish, yeah, or you can still harvest some fruits and some plants that you can consume and so on sustainably. So we still can work together, and and hopefully it's for protecting the forest, because as in the triangle of the sustainability, yeah, all about the economy and society, social and also ecology, it has to work together to get the sustainable in the environment. So I will close my presentation and our walk into the Batang Toru ecosystem this afternoon with this little quotes from Daisaku Ikeda. Every single thing in existence is worthy of supreme reverence. Nature is not something for human beings to exploit as they see fit, solely for their own interest. Both nature and humanity are parts, and at the same time, complete expression of the life of the universe. To destroy the natural world is to destroy human life. So that's what we need to understand. If we destroy our nature, we actually destroy ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Puji, for showcasing a wider background about different areas that we can all visit and continue to value more. Some of these maybe we're not even much aware of. And through this, we realize that there's just so much more to discover for ourselves. And that's all for our virtual tour. Wow, thank you so much, Miss Anne, Dika, Zai, and Dr. Puji for virtually showing us those beautiful sceneries and mesmerizing destinations. Hopefully in the future, we get to visit those places in person.
Yeah, I really want to go to the Sierra Madre mountain range. I've never been to the Philippines before, actually. Would like to make friends with the Pongus, Pongo Tapanmuliensis. I pronounced it right this time. But yeah, now that we visited those beautiful forests and appreciated the wonders they offer, I know that our viewers are extra inspired to take action for our forests.
That's right, partner. In this segment, we will learn how people could help do more things to conserve, protect, and restore our forests. Many individuals, indigenous communities, and organizations, in partnership with other entities and sectors of society, are actively working to help conserve, protect, and restore the forests and different ecosystems under threat.
Each of us play a critical role in saving the forests. Every sector of society must play their roles to ensure that our forests will be protected, conserved, and restored to their original beauty. For this last set of questions, before moving on to our next segment, may I ask Miss Anne, what is the role of the government in restoring our forests?
Sorry, it was on mute. For us in the Philippines, it's policy primarily. And also, I have to not forget that they connect us to the Sustainable Development Goals, the global agenda. They align us, they should be aligning us with that. And then customizing the climate solutions here in the Philippines. So policy making is done by Congress and Senate, and then also enforcement by, for example, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Agriculture, Bureau of Fisheries, very similar setup to other countries. But again, I have to say that they are fed by academia usually. And so it's very important that we continue our research, yeah, and that it must be practically oriented also, no, and livelihood based and sustainability based, and that it's not just government effort alone that can solve the problem. It's all of us actually, and like I said, we've passed the tipping point, and all of us are responsible as guardians of, and not just the forest, but the ecosystem as a whole. Like, I was very shocked when I came back to the Philippines that our fishermen don't can't even swim. Did you know that? They can ride a banca, they can get on a boat, but and their children have never been in the water. So how can you understand what you need to protect when you don't even know what's under there? This is the biggest shock. So and of course government can't, of course we can do it through education, no, but that's a lifetime of change. We can't wait another generation. We must do it now. So like I said, even media plays a role in the awareness campaign, and these messages must be driven in through mainstream private sector work, government work every day. Even private advertising is heading in that direction as well. So I think everybody is waking up to that reality and changing fast, very fast. So yeah, in as much as we wait for government for policy and even strategy, I would not only rely on them. We take guidance also from multilateral governments, supranational governments as well, yeah, or agencies, yeah.
Thank you for that, Miss Anne. So the next question will be to you, Dika. Could you briefly enlighten us how business and corporations play a role?
Yeah, I think for businesses and private sectors, we need to adopt net zero deforestation commitments. There's a lot of been discussions, like RSPO, for example, for palm oil plantations, especially in Southeast Asian region, but uh, it's not correctly implemented yet. Although the system has been put and the system has been put in there, they just need to follow, and try to adopt these net zero deforestation commitments. And then, using environmentally friendly sourcing standards and practice, and as well as invest more on, training to adopt climate smart practices. So, for example, when we train our farmer, we need to train them on how to do sustainable organic farming. Not always depending on chemical fertilizer or other chemical stuff. Try to respect the nature, um, and then as well as community training, and then invest. We've seen a lot of and more in in preservations and tree planting programs. So we ask if possible to invest in this type of work, and then joining the campaign, joining the movement, because we need to do this together, and we need to cooperate, between each other. So I think that's for me.
Thank you so much, Dika. And yes, the government and businesses must put people and the planet over profit and greed for any development that isn't sustainable. Posing a risk of a society regressing to an even worse state should not be called development at all. Now, Dr. Puji, in a short or brief answer, what do you think the public should do?
What public should do? Recognize your environment. Know your environment. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where we are. Actually, yeah, it's not about people who lives in the forest. It's about all of us. It's about people who lives, even like if people lives in the U.S. or in Europe or whatever. Yeah, they just knows your environment. Just knows what lives in your backyard or in your front yard. Yeah. So if you already try to know, if you already try to understand, if you already try to get to know them, then maybe it will grow on you. Yeah? It will grow on you how you care with your with what you have actually in surround you. Then hopefully this love that grows on you with to your environment, it will grows bigger to the earth. Then if you go for if you do a tourism, for example, then you will understand that if you touch the animals for taking an Insta story or Insta pictures and so on, it's actually make the animals so stressed. Yeah, it's not good for them. You understand because you know you don't want to to get touching by anybody else that you don't know, right? So you get that things. And if you really want to restore the forest, or if you want to plant some, let's say, a food for orangutans or for the animals, yeah, plant trees and so on, then you understand that you cannot plant the trees just near your village or in the belt, because then actually you will bring them to go out from the forest, right? So if you want to do that, do it inside the forest so they can still be there, stay inside, and the food source is available for them, so they don't have to go far away and getting out from the small forest that they have, because they still have their food. And also just to, so the engagement, it's not just about doing the campaign. I mean it's good, but to complete it, besides we doing the campaign for like to the government or to the industry and everything, it is really important to see to ourselves, do the campaign to ourselves. Do we already do a good way in our daily life? Do we still do something that is actually destroying the planets without we are noticing it? Yeah, so maybe first we need to understand that first, and then of course we can do more, action more and so on. But we can be our own example, that we already know how to do what we can do to protect the environment. So we need to engage better with our environment wherever we are. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Puji. So, Zai, because you're a young climate reality leader, what is the role of the youth?
Okay, through collaboration and participation as volunteers to events like these and drives led by the environmental groups or organizations, the youth build their experience and knowledge on ground that encourage them to advocate and prepare innovative projects that will help their communities to be aware of the importance of the forest in their lives. And to spread awareness about the significance of conserving our forests and natural resources, and advocate low impact lifestyle, practice proper waste management, patronize sustainable products from our locals, and recycle more often. So thank you.
Yep, thank you so much. There's actually quite a lot that we can do an individual level, community level, but yeah, start small and grow bigger afterwards. As that often repeated line goes, there is strength in numbers. So by taking collective actions, we not only build a stronger movement, showing our leaders that we are united in this fight, but we also build each other's strength. Our individual efforts are important and necessary, but they alone can't solve the climate crisis. We must take these individual efforts, fuse them into collective actions, and march together systematically towards that brighter future and better reality for our forests and all those who depend on them.
Beautifully said, Grizel. And we, the young people, have the energy, creativity, and bravery to seek a brighter future for the planet. We must not waste our youth, but use the time and energy we still have towards shaping our world for the better. Thank you so much, Miss Anne, Dr. Puji, Dika, and Zai, for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. And thank you for sharing with us not just your knowledge and expertise, but also for doing laudable work in forest protection, conservation, and restoration. May you continue inspiring people to be part of the movement to recreating a better reality for our forest and the planet. Your work is truly inspiring, not just to our climate reality leaders, but also to all our friends and allies in our movement.
Thank you so much to all our speakers for that very engaging and insightful discussion. Now we move to our climate activism segment, which is meant to provide a space for climate reality leaders and friends in the climate change and sustainability movement to share their poems, performance pieces, visual arts, and other climate related creations that somehow touches on the topic of our show. For this episode, we will feature the open letter created by young climate reality leaders from the Philippines and Indonesia and young climate advocates from the Wayfarers. Let's watch the video.
I see trees of green and red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day and the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
A world full of wonder that continues to suffer as humankind continues to neglect it.
The forests of the world are the life of the world.
Home to over 80% of land animals and plants and sustaining 1.6 billion people on which it is dependent.
The health of our forests dictate our existence, our livelihood, our daily subsistence.
And only when forests can breathe, can we breathe.
Yet we continue to deny our earth and the protection she deserves.
Unable to express her sorrow in outrage in words.
These instead manifest in mortally dangerous storms and painfully hot summers.
Even in disease outbreaks that lead to pandemics.
Which have also exposed an array of socio-economic crises.
And in the Philippines, even with a log ban and a greening program in place,
losses from illegal logging eclipse our afforestation gains.
We are one of the world's centers of biodiversity, yet our NDC excluded forestry.
And in Indonesia, despite our deforestation rate
hitting a historic low in 2020.
Our NDC still allows vast deforestation
that could potentially clear 3.25 million hectares of rainforest by 2030.
citing that oft-used excuse of progress through economic growth.
But progress that isn't sustainable shouldn't be called progress at all.
Progress is made when politicians acknowledge the urgency of the climate crisis.
And the state of our society and environment actually match up to their pretty words and promises.
Progress is when businesses listen to demand.
The demand of the people, who would choose sustainability if they were given the chance.
Businesses with values in their value chain.
And who don't confine this Earth's finite sources to society's upper 1%.
But instead share it fairly with the 7.9 billion people on the planet.
Governments and businesses already work with each other.
They just need to work in the right direction with the people they're supposed to serve together.
And we, the youth,
have the energy,
creativity,
and bravery
to claim the world we want to see.
While we're young, we must learn to work together
and recognize the unique value and contribution of each other.
For in this critical decade, for the climate that we find the peak of our youth in.
Our choices, our patterns, our behavior can determine the course of the world.
So join us.
No matter where you are or what you're doing,
you have a place in the climate space.
Together, let's reimagine
a world that stayed below 1.5 degrees.
Where not only the mountains, but also the cities are filled with trees.
And we can all breathe and live freely.
This is the world we want for you and for me.
Me and me.
And me.
And me.
Isabuhay natin.
Mari
kita
wujudkan.
Let's make it a reality.
I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
What a wonderful world. That was a very strong message from our young climate reality leaders. If you also want to share your letter, you may post a video and tag at Climate Reality PH and at Climate Reality Ina on Instagram.
Thank you very much to the youth leads of both branches and the members of the team behind the video. Jeka Clemmer, Ivana Joaquin, Jolina Loneza, and Bea Montazon. For the video editing, Dani Madriaga for the script, and Belai Dandam and Keith Antenta for the cover. This video will also be posted on the social media pages of both branches, so don't forget to share it when it's already up. Let's spread the word on how we, the young people of the earth, reimagine the planet we live on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Come visit soon.
Will do.
Oh, actually, we are not done yet. Sorry.
Oh, I thought it's done.
Sorry.
We should have pictures.
That's a little bit more. So to complete the 3 R's of today's World Environment Day, we present Restore the Earth, Adopt a Seedling Drive. Restore the Earth is a donation drive to raise funds for our reforestation efforts in partnership with local organizations. The drive will start today during this Klimatotohanan episode and will run until World Arbor Day on June 25th. We partnered with community-based organizations working on forest management and forest reforestation activities to be the beneficiaries of this program. In the Philippines, we have FEED, as the partner organization, and in Indonesia, we have ASRI.
The details of the donation, including where you will deposit your donation, are posted on the social media pages of the Climate Reality Project Philippines and the Climate Reality Project Indonesia. If you're looking to transform your learnings from this episode into actions, this is one step in doing that. Join us as we restore our forests for the people, for the planet, and for everyone. Let us make our generation hashtag Generation Restoration.
Join the fight for our nature, find your niche, find your place in the climate space. No matter where you are or what you're doing, find a way to give back and contribute to building the society you want to live in. We would like to thank you all our climate reality leaders and other forest advocates who tune in our Facebook page to watch this episode. Once again, if you would like to receive certificate from us, please type in your name and fill in the form in our Facebook post. Please join us again on our next episode on June 19th, where we will celebrate Pride Month by discussing the different opportunities and challenges for the inclusion of sexual and gender minorities in disaster risk reduction and climate action.
This has been Klimatotohanan, a fortnightly webcast organized and led by our climate reality leaders to tackle urgent climate issues of today and tomorrow. Why Klimatotohanan? Because we need real talk and real action on the climate crisis. Please also visit the Instagram page of the Climate Reality Project Philippines at Climate Reality PH and our Twitter account at Climate Real PH. Also, visit the socials of our guests' organizations as their handles are flashed on the screen. Thank you once again for tuning in and see you again in our next episode. Have a great Saturday evening.
See you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.